Aloha and welcome to the Boy Mom Podcast with my mom, Monica Swanson. On the Boy Mom Podcast, it is our goal to bring you practical advice and biblical wisdom for raising boys in this sometimes crazy world. You can always find show notes over at monicaswanson.com/podcasts. We're so glad you're here.
You don't want to have strong convictions about things that you don't even understand. I think there's a lot of, especially in the social media world, very strong and dearly held positions on issues we just know nothing about. And so our goal here is to help people understand, people generally, but young people specifically, to introduce them to concepts. And every news story is an opportunity for teaching.
Hey friends, you are listening to the voice of Nick Eicher, who along with Brian Basham joins me to talk about kids and the news, specifically teenagers and the news. And they're going to offer us tips for talking to your teens about the news, and also tell us about World Watch, which is a brand new current events program produced by Christian journalists that keeps teenagers up to date on what's happening in the world through highly engaging and biblically sound 10-minute videos. I don't know about you, but I am so down for this. I was really excited to meet Brian, who is the host and producer of World Watch, and Nick, who is the CCO. I think what they're doing at World Watch is really cool, especially in a year like 2020, where the news can be incredibly confusing and overwhelming for all of us, especially our kids. So, you guys ask me about homeschooling a lot, and I know some of you are homeschoolers or quickly becoming homeschoolers as well. But one thing I've loved about having my kids at home all day is having the chance to introduce our boys to current events going on in the world literally as they happen. We'll take a break in our day to watch a debate or an important news announcement. The boys will be doing math on one screen and watching a rocket take off on another. Okay, I don't totally endorse or encourage multitasking during school, but the point is, I love that my boys are pretty clued into what's going on in the world. And it's always been my goal to help them stay informed and to encourage them to be critical thinkers, not just agreeing with what someone else says, but taking in the facts on any given topic, comparing it to their biblical worldview, and forming an educated opinion on it. See, we live in a world where news is most often presented in a biased way, right? And while I think it's important for our kids to know what's going on in the world, I think they need a lot of wisdom as they learn how to take it in and process it. Well, World Watch just started their 10-minute daily videos this August, and I honestly think it's the coolest idea. As a subscriber to World Watch, your kid can tune in every day of the year, all year long, to hear any news stories, current events, and even interesting developments in science and technology, all from a biblical perspective and all presented in a really entertaining and engaging way. So leading up to August, World Watch shared a World Watch in 3, which was just a quick 3-minute version of the show. And I watched these all summer, and I'm not kidding. I learned so much from them. I'll link to the YouTube channel where you can catch up on all those in the archives. Now, I know a lot of you are going to have kids home this fall, so I really encourage you to take advantage of time with them to talk about current events and issues going on in our world. This can be so educational, and you might learn a lot along the way, too. I do think world news can be a helpful way to do this with intention. So, Brian and Nick are going to join me for a short interview. They're so much fun to talk to. You got to love a good radio voice, right? You'll hear it. But I think this chat might inspire you to incorporate news and good conversations into your family time, whether you homeschool or not. And then after the interview, I'm going to share with you 5 tips that Brian and Nick shared with me for talking to your kids about the news. Wherever you might get your news, I think you're going to find these helpful. So guys, I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you for continuing to leave your ratings and reviews for this podcast. If you haven't left one yet, hey, you can hit pause right now, scroll to the bottom on your phone. You're going to see those 5 stars. You can tap on them or leave a few words about what you like most about the Boy Mom podcast. I also want to tell you that my son, Jonah, just shared another episode of his Truth for Youth podcast, and he's interviewing his younger brother, Luke Swanson, about being a young pro surfer in the world and how that works with his faith. I think it was a great interview, and your kids might enjoy that. So I'll link to that in my show notes as well. And as always, there will be links to World Watch, to everything that Brian and Nick and I talk about in this episode over at monicaswanson.com/podcast. And I hope you enjoy this conversation. Well, Brian and Nick, welcome to the Boy Mom podcast.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This is my first time interviewing two of you at once, so this is going to be fun.
You might think differently when it's done, but we'll hope so.
Yeah, there's ego and alter ego, and you get to figure out who's whom.
Terrific. I love it. Well, I'm used to a house full of boys talking over each other, so this will be just like home for me. Well, guys, before we dive into such an important and relevant topic today, would you take a second to just introduce yourself and what you guys are all about, and why I get to have you on the show?
All right. Well, my name is Brian Basham. If you've watched World Watch, you probably know me as the Big Bash. And anyway, I'm a broadcaster. I've been doing it for a lot of years in television, and we just made the move over to World Watch here this year. But I'm a husband to my wife Megan, who also works with World, and I've got two. I guess I'm a girl dad. I've got two girls, 6 and 10, that we hang out together, and a dog. That's the short story of me.
And
Awesome.
I'm Nick Eicher. I'm Chief Content Officer at World. And so Brian mentioned he's not a boy dad. He's a girl dad. I'm mixed. I am a girl dad and a boy dad and a girl grandpa. My job over here at World is to oversee all of the content we do, from the magazine to the website to the podcast. And I host our World and Everything in It daily podcast. And I am producing the World Watch. So it's been great working with Brian Basham.
Well, I'm so excited to talk about everything that you guys do. Can I hear the backstory, how all of this came to be? Talk to me about World Watch.
Well, I will start on the idea phase and then bring Brian in, because we started with the idea phase and brought Brian in. So I think that's
There you go.
appropriate, right? So yeah, World is a magazine, and it began over 30 years ago. We morphed into all of the different media that have grown up. We went to daily web news. We still publish that magazine bi-weekly, so 24 issues a year. We began a podcast, a daily podcast that started as a radio program. And what we found was that podcasting is actually more engaging than radio. So we had many radio stations for our program, and we ended up dropping them and going straight podcast. So it was moving from the sort of printed word journalism that we're known for and that we're best at to spoken word, which allowed us then to morph into video as we reimagine our products for children. And so what do you do with that? Well, you go video. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Well, let's find someone who knows how to do it. So we called Brian, and here's Brian to pick up the story.
And my wife, we had a relationship prior to this, and so my wife had been with World for a while. She's a writer; she does a lot of cultural stuff. But anyway, and so I came on earlier this year, and it was kind of a good fit for me, and one that I love broadcasting, but I also have a heart for kids. I prior to doing this used to go and I did presentations for several years in high schools where I kind of spoke to kids about making good life choices and things that way. And so it was a good way for me to combine two passions that I love, and that's TV and the news and really kind of getting your mind around news and what's happening, and sharing that and helping grow kids in that way. So that's how we got started.
Well, I just think it's great just with everything going on in the news. And I know there's always a lot going on in the news, but I feel like 2020, it has escalated so much. And so before we talk more about World Watch, I just think it would be helpful for all of us to talk about just kids and the news, because I know that I struggle to introduce my kids to things going on in the world, because I don't want to give a particular news station's opinion. And yet I want them to be educated. I want them to be aware of the things going on. And so maybe we could just go through some guidelines, some things we can talk about when it comes to just introducing kids to world events and things going on daily in the news. Can we talk about that a little
Absolutely.
bit?
I mean, this whole thing began with an idea for a 10-minute daily news program for kids that would promote biblical worldview, that would promote news literacy. And that would be safe for families and for classrooms. Yeah. So that was the idea. And you mentioned 2020 and all the crazy stuff that's been going on in our country. Our idea was to start preparing this thing, go out to homeschool conferences and educator conferences and introduce them to the idea, take the Big Bash around, let them meet him. Well, guess what happened? The coronavirus happened, and you couldn't have
Mm-hmm.
large gatherings like that. So our CEO, Kevin
No.
Martin, had the idea, let's do this. In the meantime, let's give students something now. And so we
Mm-hmm.
decided, okay, well, we'll do World Watch News in 2. And so Brian and I are sitting
Mm-hmm.
here trying to figure out how to do World Watch News in 2. And that was
2
tough.
minutes.
So we changed it to World Watch News in 3, which was easier.
That's still got to be hard.
Writing longer is easier. So we've been doing this show. We did all starting in the month of May. Gave them a taste of what this World Watch feature would be in August,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's how it began. How
Right.
it's really interesting for me because I've been producing content for adults. But the
Right.
interesting thing is that this program, World Watch News, we've got viewers all over the spectrum. We have young kids watching, we have teenagers watching, and here's the secret. Parents love it too. They have found that this
Right.
journalism is really accessible, and you learn a lot more. Because again, as a journalist, you make certain assumptions about the audience. You assume a certain
Right.
amount of knowledge. When you're writing for younger
Yes.
people, you don't assume that knowledge. You say, "Let me explain
Sure.
this to you," and not
I love that.
coming down from on high, but just here introducing you to some experiences that you may not have heard about yet. And it's in the course of that sort of teaching in journalism, adults are watching that and saying, I learned something too.
Well, I was going to say, I've been following your 3, because we're recording this in July, but it will air in August. And so I've been keeping up on the 3-minute daily shows, and I certainly have been learning myself. I'm like, what I love is when you share a piece of news and then because you're assuming assuming nothing really, giving a quick education behind what you're teaching, I've found it just really educational for myself as well as my kids. So I've loved that. I mean, just your ability to do it so succinctly is really impressive. You give a little piece of news, you back up, give just maybe a 20-second, always entertaining. They're great animations, all of that. And so, yeah, I've found it really educational for myself. Okay, so whatever our kids are watching, some of the tips that you have suggested, I think are really helpful. I mean, we're raising our kids with a biblical worldview. We homeschool our kids, but at the same time, I want my boys to be critical thinkers. I want them to learn to compare what they see on the news or in culture with what God's word says. And so I love that one of the things you suggest is to ask teens what they think rather than tell them what to think. Talk to us a little bit about that and how you even work to do that through World Watch.
Well, it's hard to even be able to express an opinion or express any kind of knowledge if you don't have it. So we begin with the idea of news literacy. And it is, as Brian said, we won't just say that the United States has just invoked sanctions against Iran. We'll explain what a sanction is and what's the range and what's the effect, what's the intention, so that they can learn. You don't want to have strong convictions about things that you don't even understand. I think there's a lot of, especially in the social media world, very strong and dearly held positions on issues we just know nothing about. And so our goal here is to help people understand, people generally, but young people specifically, to introduce them to concepts. And every news story is an opportunity for teaching. You know that as a homeschool mom. Whenever there's a story, that's an opportunity to learn. And that's the way we feel about it as journalists. It's actually writing for young people is far more interesting than writing for people our age, right? Because again, there's still that wonder of the world. Everything's interesting.
Yes.
Everything is worth explaining and exploring. And so that's what we do.
And another thing I think that's important, as we go is, and for you, as a parent, me as a parent to come on behind this is to go, we may introduce something like, we talk about economics actually quite a bit on our show. And when you say we're going to talk about economics, outside of Nick, who's passionate about it, a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, you're going to talk about economics again. Well, the idea is that we will go into a little something here, and then the next time we bring it up, we'll add on to it a little bit, and we look for that for opportunities for parents to also, in these stories that we're showing and we're talking about, is we'll give some, and we'll give a nice solid base there, And the idea is if the cool thing is when parents are watching this too, and we're finding that a lot of parents are watching it with their students or after their students or before their students, whatever. And then when it's done, they're coming back behind, and the kid might have some follow-up questions, and mom or dad is stepping into that and helping explain that. And for us, we feel good about being that launching off spot to have these good conversations as parents.
I love that. And I think that that's ultimately what my husband and I hope is that as they compare what they see or hear to the Word of God, they're going to come up with a conclusion that's biblical. So us being there to kind of guide them and mentor them through that. And I think that's one thing that as a homeschool mom, I've come up against, people who have suggested, oh, they hit a certain age, junior high maybe, and, you've taught them everything, or you've given them a good foundation. They're ready now to go figure things out. And that's where I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but I disagree with that, because as much as I may have taught them a foundation or built a foundation for them, they need a lot of mentoring all through those high school years.
Yeah, and without a solid base of understanding, again, you're left with contending with people's opinions. So there's the value of opinions. They're fine, dime a dozen. But if you know the facts, that's a totally different ball game. And so as you build news literacy into your young ones, they're better able to take more informed opinions. I mean, Brian mentioned economics. We like to get into what the Supreme Court is doing. We like to explain how our system works. We did one story where the Supreme Court had a ruling on the Electoral College. If you remember, it was one of the big decisions of the Supreme Court. We use that as an opportunity to explain, well, what is the Electoral College? Is it a thing you enroll in and take classes? No, it's not. This is how we elect a president. And we were able to walk through that bit by little bit, and just in about 90 seconds time, give you a good overview to start thinking, what is the Electoral College? How does it work? Why did they institute it in the first place? And we try to answer those questions. Because when you begin to put together a piece of journalism, this, you have to answer these questions: who, what, where, when, why, how, right? That's journalism 101: who, what, where, when, why, how. Those questions are all fraught with worldview significance, particularly the last two. If you say who, what, where, well, how is that worldview? Why, how? Those are huge questions.
Sure.
But I will submit to you that the question who is fraught with massive worldview significance. If you are talking, for example, again, I'll stay with the Supreme Court. If you're thinking about the religious liberty decision concerning the hiring and firing of teachers, that was also at the Supreme Court, the question that you have to answer, who? Are you talking about the teachers, or are you talking about the school? The answer to the question who is significant. If you come from a religious liberty standpoint, the who question is the church school, and their ability and freedom under the Constitution to hire and fire as they see fit, because their job is to teach religious doctrine, biblical doctrine.
Right.
So if you say the who is the teacher, then you're actually not asking a religious liberty question, but you're asking more of a question about employment law. Well, from a biblical worldview, you say no. The most important thing is that the church has the freedom in the land of the free and the home of the brave to choose the teachers and in effect the ministers that they appoint to do that doctrinal teaching. So the question who is a very big worldview question, and that's where we're coming from as biblical journalists.
I love that. And where else will kids get that?
Yeah, and look, you have your regular news, and you've got all your cable news stations, but you have very little news that's designed for this age, and within that realm, very few are going to line up a lot with your biblical view, if at all. And so that's kind of where we're trying to come into that point. And even though we may not, we're not looking to biblically hit people over the head with every single story. It's really we're trying to come with biblical truth, and we're not, and that's kind of our baseline here. But sometimes we just tell something that's true, that the story is true, and that's what you can rely on, is that you're getting the facts, the true facts, and not some weird spin on it, or left out information or completely not.
Right. With an agenda.
Yes.
Right. And we've loved too the fact that you cover technology, some really interesting things, and you usually put a really fun spin on that. So my boys are science geeks and just love anything to do with technology. So that's really fun to see too.
Yeah, we're glad to hear that, because that's something that's kind of been a priority of ours. And we have a gentleman who works with us, Rich Bishop, and he is fantastic. And he's one of those guys. He's that guy to the core. And he finds these interesting science things and you know, the stuff with NASA that he's all into all that stuff. And so he's really good at helping us get a really good, diverse group of stories.
Yeah, diverse.
Yeah, in a day, you know, we have only a few minutes during this early one, you know, to tell 4 or 5 good stories. And so we really strive hard to get a nice big mix of stories. And I think he does a really nice job of helping us get to that spot where we don't miss out on some of these really cool opportunities, because we're just trying to tell all the big news of the day.
Totally.
Oh,
yeah. And I think that's what makes it fun, is that kids they always want variety. Like, you know, they get bored so easily. Their attention span is so short. So to see something different every day and wonder what they're going to learn the next day is a really neat
concerning element. Rich, he has been with God's World News for over 30 years. So he's been publishing news for kids for a very, very long time. And he's a great artist. He's a great graphic artist. He knows how to tell a story. And yeah, it's Rich who's turned me into a complete NASA geek. I am totally sold on NASA and SpaceX.
Oh yeah.
And watching those
my boys too.
Weren't those great? Watch that.
Oh yeah, they were glued at watching.
Yeah, to see that rocket land and be reusable. That's that's free enterprise. That's the private economy working to advance science. It's a beautiful thing.
Amazing. Yeah, I have to say, every day though, when I watch your 3-minute clips, I think what a relief it will be when you get to share 10 minutes. It's going to feel like huge, because 3 minutes is so quick to pack in that news.
Admittedly, it's a struggle, right? Because if you take any given subject, I mean, you could go here and here and here and here, and we have to force ourselves to kind of pick one, maybe two, and follow that line and work it out a little bit. But if we went all the way, we'd blow our few minutes up. And so this 10-minute again is going to kind of allow us. It's going to allow us to maybe hit it in the beginning and actually come back to it a little bit later on in the newscast and hit it a little bit further at a point. And then, like I was talking earlier, is that it'll lay the groundwork for then whatever the next thing we talk about it later on. Now we can start working with a little bit of assumption that we've got a baseline knowledge of this stuff, and we can try and build on that and build and build and build and build it. So, you know, over the course of the people watching it over a few years, when they didn't know anything to start, but this gradual building of a foundation of knowledge and understanding of how the world works is being laid out for them. That's the stuff that excites us about putting this together and moving forward.
Right. I'm thinking this could probably be a bit of somehow work into credits for homeschoolers, because 10 minutes a day, I mean, our kids are going to get educated through this. So I'm going to find a way to creatively incorporate that into some kind of class I'm going to give my kids credit for. Another beauty of homeschooling.
In between their surf time, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Now, right? Everybody's a homeschooler with got a good taste of it with the schools being closed down for COVID. So parents are starting to get a little more involved in their kids' educations.
I love that. I'm thankful. I think there's, you know, as hard as it is and as unknown as the future is, I think there's some really good stuff coming out of it. And I think a lot of parents are realizing they have what it takes and they really can do a lot more. And even if the kids are still doing a curriculum through a school, with that time they have at home, helping them learn things like current events, world news, what a gift. I mean, that's preparing them for their future. And it's so important that kids have the literacy to understand all of these things and choose well for themselves, because if we just listen to what's around us, I think it's going to be scary for our kids growing up. They need to make really good, wise choices about what they tune into. And Brian, you're the main voice for this, right? Even the 10-minute.
So I'll anchor it, but we're building a team, and over the course here, just this last week, we started to introduce a few of our new reporters into the show, and so we're excited. right now we're going to be, we've got 2 studios that we're going to be working out, one out of Charlotte, one in Asheville. And so we're going to have the crew split out over those 2. But we've got 3 of the reporters that'll be doing features here in Charlotte this last couple of weeks. And so we've been working on stuff together. And so I'm really excited about it. They're super sharp. They're super excited and just awesome people. And so they're going to bring a lot of good energy to it. So it'll be a feature of ours.
I was going to say, but do they have your energy? Because I don't know if anyone can match your energy.
They do. They've got a lot of good energy. But
Fun.
When you're trying to pack a lot into the 3 minutes, you get excited about getting it all in there, and so it gets your energy booked up.
Totally.
Yeah, these young people have recently been through our World Journalism Institute program, and so these are fairly fresh out of college people. So yeah, they're nobody can match the energy of Brian Basham, but they don't have to. They don't have to. It's a mix.
I love it. That's so much fun, and I love how you wrap up every show. Remind them that no matter the news, the purpose of the Lord will stand.
Yeah,
right?
and I love that, because you can feel, man, if you listen to too much news in life, I mean, you can really start to feel burdened by it and overwhelmed by it. And I think that was just, for me, that was just a key way to finish it up and just go, look, okay, so we've told you all this news, and we tried, by the way, you can probably tell, we don't try to burden them too much, and so we won't give you too much heavy stuff in a day, and that's by design. Yeah. But still, regardless of what you hear in the news, to ultimately know that he is there and that his purpose will prevail, and that is something that's very important to us as we go forward.
So important. Yeah, I love that. Well, guys, we're going to have links to anything we've touched on here. Can you tell us kind of the plan, when exactly this is going to all kick off, and just if somebody wants to tune in right now and try to track it down and find you, where all they can find and follow you between social media and World Watch itself?
The website to go to is pretty simple, worldwatch.news. That's the domain. It's not a .com, it's a .news. So worldwatch.news. That's the place to go to find out what you need to know about it. And as you say, we're recording it early. It's August when listeners are tuned in. So World Watch is going, Lord willing.
Yeah.
And so worldwatch.news is the place to find out everything you need to find out about it.
And people can kick off their school year by making this a daily habit.
Absolutely. So we're and you can join anytime, obviously, throughout the year. It's a daily, so folks can add on. We're going to be in schools, and we're also going to be in homeschools. And so it's if you're not jumping in right on August 10th, it's not a big deal. You can jump in at any point throughout the year, which is awesome.
This is a year-round. It's a year-round program. The news doesn't stop, and we made the deliberate decision. Well, if the news isn't going to stop, how on earth are we going to stop? So absolutely, it is meant for the classroom and for the homeschool classroom, but all year round. Particularly, you're a homeschooler. Homeschooling is kind of a lifestyle, right? So you're always learning, you're always working on it. And if you've got a 10-minute program that just keeps on going, that's the education doesn't stop, and because the news doesn't stop.
Good. Right. And for all the moms like me, you can put it on and say it's for the kids, but you'll probably be learning.
There you go.
That's the big secret.
That's the secret. So good. Well, we're going to link to everything. Make sure people know how they can tune in and be a part of this. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a part of our classroom this year, and already tuning into the short ones and just loving that. And people can catch up, right? You can go back and see past episodes as well, at least with the 3-minute version.
Yeah, that 3-minute version will probably live on YouTube. And so nice thing about it is because of the instructional nature of it, the learning aspect of it, you could go back there and learn a ton and feel like you're watching it fresh in that day and probably not miss a beat.
I love that. Oh, guys, well, thank you so much. It's been fun for me to learn a little bit more about what you're doing, and I can't wait to follow along.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us.
All right.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Monica. Thanks.
Thanks. Aloha.
Aloha.
Hey, guys. Oh, I loved that group aloha at the end. Wasn't that fun? But truly, I hope you enjoyed that conversation, and I hope you're inspired to plug into the news, not avoid it, as much as some of us want to, but to tune in, to find a safe and reliable news source, and to bring your kids in and to have some good conversations. Of course, we don't want this to take over our day, but 10 minutes a day, that is so doable. And guys, I want to make sure you know that through August 31st, new subscribers to World Watch will receive access to the program for a discounted price of $69.99 per year. To learn more and subscribe, visit them online at worldwatch.news. And of course, I'll have links to that and anything else we've mentioned over in show notes. Next, I'm going to share with you some tips for talking to your teens and tweens about the news. I think this applies to younger kids too, just modify as is age appropriate. So here are 5 tips from Nick and Brian and World Watch. They suggest, number 1, don't assume knowledge. And we talked about this in the interview, but really, we don't want to assume kids already understand big concepts. So maybe take a pause and explore just the basics about whatever is going on in the news so that kids have an understanding to launch from. That's super important. I know for me too, sometimes I have to stop and look something up so that I understand the news. Number 2, ask teens what they think rather than tell them what to think. We did cover this briefly as well in our conversation, but I think this is really key to raising kids who are critical thinkers. We want to ask them, make their little brains do some work as they process what they just heard on the news or as they read a news article. Ask them what they think and give them a chance to work through that and then have a good conversation. We have a lot of these in our home, and I think they're so important for our kids to learn to be thinkers as they grow up. Number 3, incorporate a teaching element into the discussion. And again, like we talked about in this interview, if you're using World Watch, there is already a teaching element, which is what I love about them. But even at that, you can still pause the news. You can stop and say, let's learn more about this. Maybe it's something your kid is especially interested in. Maybe it's science or technology or about something going on in another country. What a great opportunity to pause and to explore. Go on the internet, find a book, pull out a map and learn more together. The news is such a great springboard for education, so take full advantage of that. And then next is consider what the Bible has to say about the headlines of the day and discuss it. This to me is probably the most important thing. I believe that the Bible has relevance for every topic of all times. So I think turning to the Bible as we talk about world events is super helpful. And you know, from all the times I talk about Proverbs here on the podcast, and I mentioned that we try to have our boys read Proverbs pretty much every day. And Dave and I try to keep up on Proverbs as well. But it's amazing how we'll hear something in the news and a proverb will pop into our minds from that day or that week's reading. And we can just see the wisdom of God's word and how it applies to things going on in our world. Or maybe there's a story from the Bible that relates to what's going on in another country or some piece of wisdom. It's just so important to point out to our kids how relevant the Bible is to current events. I just think that is super useful. And then lastly, as Brian Basham closes every show by saying, he says, remind them that no matter the news, the purpose of the Lord will stand. I think that is so encouraging because certainly we can get overwhelmed by the news. We can get freaked out and even scared. And I think it's so important to remind our kids that the purpose of the Lord will stand. God is sovereign. Nothing catches him by surprise. Nothing freaks him out. He's okay. And he is our source of strength. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so we can just return to the biblical principles of God's goodness and his love for us and our security in him. And I think that's really important to keep in mind as we watch the news. Okay, guys. So I hope again that you've been encouraged and inspired to bring the news into your home in a healthy and safe way. Talk about it with your kids. Help them become critical thinkers. And I think World Watch is a great way to do all of that. So I hope you'll check them out. There will be a link to World Watch in show notes. And speaking of show notes, guys, we've still got an August bundle giveaway of Surface sunscreen going on. So be sure to hop over to the show notes where you can leave a quick comment in response to my question over there, and you'll be entered to win a whole bundle of Surface sunscreen. It's still sunny out there for most of you. I know that the sun is shining usually all the way through the early fall, depending on where you live. But you know, dermatologists tell us that we should be wearing sunscreen year round. So certainly check out Surface sunscreen. You'll always get 20% off all their products at surfacesunscreen.com using code BOYMOM. And you can read more about Surface in my show notes. But I'm excited to be offering this bundle giveaway. 2 of you have won already already this summer, and so far everyone tells me they're loving it. So thank you again to Surface for that. Thank you to World Watch for sponsoring this episode and this great conversation. I was so encouraged. All right, guys, thanks for being a part of this podcast community. Thanks for spreading the word about the Boy Mom Podcast. We have so many great episodes coming up this fall. I'm really excited. So have a wonderful rest of your week. And until next time, aloha.